and thanks for joining me. My husband and I recently visited with his family for the holidays here in Turkey, and I thought it would be fun to show you a little bit of what we've been up to. I also wanted to share some Turkish food with you that my mother-in-law likes to make, including her Yaprak Sarma recipe. And if you're a fan of Turkish food, you've probably had sarma before, although for some reason in the US they're often called dolma. Dolma means stuffed, whereas sarma means wrapped, but whatever you call them, they're delicious little finger foods. Yaprak sarma uses grape leaves to wrap the filling with, and my mother-in-law collects grape leaves in her village during the fall time and then keeps them preserved in a jar with salt water until she's ready to use them. The filling is quite simple, and there aren't any measurements provided because my mother-in-law is kind of a wild woman in the kitchen and she just adds whatever she likes. But basically, it's equal parts rice and equal parts bulgur. Bulgur is cracked wheat, and I know that it's not the easiest thing to find in the US, but if you have a Mediterranean or Middle Eastern grocery store, you'll likely find it there. And then, after rinsing the grains, she adds salt, pepper, and pul biber. Pul biber is a red pepper spice, but it's not actually very hot, it's quite mild. I used to get something called Aleppo pepper in the US, and I'd say that it has the same flavor. Then she adds in a couple spoonfuls of her homemade tomato paste, as well as some oil, and then finally, her finely chopped onions and chopped parsley are mixed in. First thing you'll want to do with the grape leaf is remove the stem, and you'll notice that the veins in the leaf stick out more on one side, so you want to make sure that that side is facing up when rolling because you want the smoother side of the leaf to be on the exterior. Very little filling is actually needed in the sarma since the grains will expand a bit when heated, and my mother-in-law kept removing filling from mine because apparently I was overstuffing them. It took a little bit of work, but eventually I got the hang of how to tuck in the leaf and roll them. I'm no expert, but my final ones were definitely better than the ones I made at first. Just like with many of her other recipes, she likes to make these in big batches, and she enlisted the help of her neighbor friend for this one. It's very much a communal activity for her and a way to socialize with friends. Finally, she lined her pot with grape leaves before adding the sarma to it. They're packed in really tightly, and then what she does is she fills it almost to the top with water, and then she adds in a few tablespoons of olive oil, as well as a sprinkle of salt and pepper. And then finally, she tops them with lemon slices, and then she'll put a plate on top while cooking them to add some weight to the sarma so that they don't fall apart. In addition to making lots and lots of sarma for the holidays, my mother-in-law also made a big batch of baklava. I made a video with her baklava recipe last year, which I'll link for you here. And baklava is actually one of her specialties. I've tried lots and lots of varieties since I've been here in Turkey, and I still think that hers is the best, just because it always stays so nice and crispy. There are a lot of ways that you can make baklava, various shapes and nuts that you can use, but I just like hers with walnuts. And just like with Sarma, her baklava was a group activity that a friend of hers helped with. I think they made 6 big trays altogether. People like her baklava so much that they ask her to make it for them, and then they just provide her with their own nuts that they want her to use, and she does the rest of the work. And let me tell you, it is a lot of work. Although she works quite quickly, the whole process and setup takes hours to complete. So now when I have a piece of baklava, I try to slow down a little bit because I know how much time was put into it. During our time visiting with my husband's family, we enjoyed many delicious home-cooked meals. During the month of Ramadan, you'll often be invited to family or friends' houses for an iftar meal, which is just the first meal that you'd have after fasting for the day. I'm not religious, so I don't partake in fasting, but I can certainly get on board with enjoying a good meal. One night, my husband's cousin invited us over for dinner, and she's a really great cook, so I always look forward to her meals, and she did not disappoint this time. Now, traditionally, if you're fasting during the day, the first thing that you'd eat is a date. So there were these little dishes on the table with dried dates, and then after that we had soup. Mercimek is lentil soup, and it's very common here in Turkey. And then there were also various forms of salads, some fresh, some with yogurt, lots of other things. And there were a few main options with meat. And his cousin made içli kofta, which is something that I really love. They're these little deep-fried football-shaped things with meat and spices inside. They're so good. And of course, there was lots of bread on the table. I read somewhere that Turkey has the highest bread consumption per capita in the world, which I completely believe. And then after dinner, we gathered in the living room and waited for the tea to brew. I think most people here probably drink more tea than water, and I personally really only like unflavored iced tea, but when I'm offered tea, I usually just take 1 glass to be polite, and I let it sit and cool a bit. With tea, we also had some dessert, and I found desserts in Turkey to be extremely sweet, so the tea does complement that nicely. During the holidays, my in-laws invited over many guests for snacks and tea. People stopped in throughout the day, and my mother-in-law had her treats ready to go. It's common to get both a salty and a sweet treat when you visit, so she served some of her sarma as well as her baklava. And then, of course, there was more tea. Our little time away was quite busy. In addition to seeing lots of my husband's family and friends, we also had some errands to run, like taking Fig to the vet for her vaccines and picking up her flea and tick treatments. Luckily, Fig is a healthy girl and only has to see the vet to stay up to date on her vaccines, and she doesn't mind the vet as long as she gets a treat at the end. We also checked out a caravan maker in Istanbul. Looking at caravans seems to be a hobby of ours that we started when we were living in Seattle, and we continued it after moving to Turkey. In addition to doing some shopping in Istanbul, we also checked out this little greenhouse called the Cactus Evi, located in the Bostancı neighborhood. We hadn't seen this before, but it was a cute little setup along the waterfront and was enjoyable to walk through and check out all the various forms of cacti. I love the look of having real plants in my house, but I don't have the greenest thumb, so I think a cactus is the perfect plant for me. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this little video. I really appreciate it. We're back in Dacia now, and I have more videos coming soon. If you'd like to see more from my perspective as an American living in Turkey, please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel and giving this video a thumbs up. Until next time, thanks!